300,000 years ago, the Earth was alive with possibilities. Not one human story, but 7. Imagine stepping onto that ancient stage. The air is colder. The sky's wider. The land's both familiar and utterly alien. Herds of strange beasts roam the plains, their shadows stretching across valleys where rivers are still carving new paths. Grasslands ripple beneath the African sun, while ice creeps slowly across the northern world like a white hand pressing down on the continent. Forests are thick, tangled, and filled with creatures that would vanish long before history ever learned their names. And moving among them, in scattered groups, are not one, but many kinds of human. Neanderthals, the heavy-boned titans of Europe, thick with muscle, built for snow and ice. Denisovans, the high-altitude phantoms of Asia, who left no art behind but etched their legacy into our blood. Homo erectus, the pioneers, the great wanderers, who had already carried fire and stone far across continents for nearly 2 million years. Homo naledi, smaller, mysterious, cave dwellers in Africa who buried their dead in darkness. Homo heidelbergensis, mighty hunters, standing tall, perhaps the bridge between ancient and modern. Homo floresiensis, the hobbits, scarcely over 3 feet tall, surviving in the shadow of volcanoes on an island in Indonesia. And us Homo sapiens, flat-faced, strange-skulled newcomers, hardly the masters of anything yet. 7 humans, 7 experiments of evolution, all alive at once, all struggling under the same sun. This was not our planet alone. It was theirs too. Picture a single night. A storm builds on the horizon, lightning carving the sky open in brief white scars. In one valley, Neanderthals huddle around a fire, their heavy hands gripping spears hardened in flame. In another, Sapiens crouch in the dark, whispering stories to restless children, waiting for dawn. Miles away, Denisovans climb mountain passes, lungs pulling in thin air that would kill others. And far to the south, on an island cut off from the world, a tiny figure sharpens a stone, its eyes glowing in the firelight of a cave. Each of them thought they were simply surviving. None of them knew they were walking into a contest that would decide the fate of humanity itself, because not all would last. For millions of years, evolution had crafted many ways to be human. Different bodies, different minds, different tools, some stronger, some weaker, some smarter in ways we may never fully understand. But survival is not fair. Nature sets the stage, and climate, chance, and competition write the script. And so, the world turned. Ice advanced and retreated. Forests burned, regrew, and died again. Rivers shifted their courses. And into this shifting, brutal world, 7 kinds of human rose, collided, and one by one, disappeared. This is not the story of how the strongest survived. Neanderthals were stronger. This is not the story of how the cleverest endured. Erectus had lasted far longer. This is the story of how the most adaptable, the most patient, the most stubborn of all humans, Sapiens, stumbled forward through every failure, every scar, and somehow came out alone. But our survival was never guaranteed. For tens of thousands of years, we were not the rulers. We were the weak, the fragile, the prey. And every night we lit a fire. Every tool we sharpened, every plan we whispered to each other in the dark, was a wager against extinction. Who killed who? Was it us, pressing Neanderthals to the edge? Was it disease, invisible and merciless, sweeping through tribes? Was it climate, pulling the ground out from beneath entire peoples? Or was it fate, choosing at random, leaving only one story behind? The bones do not always answer. They leave silence, gaps, mysteries. They leave questions that echo across time. Why us? Why only us? And what would the world look like if it hadn't been only us? This is the story of that world. A world where 7 humans walked the earth together, where survival was not destiny, but a gamble, played against predators, against hunger, against the ice, and against each other. A world that forged us in blood, in fire, in fear, and in hope. The story of who we were, before we were alone. The sun beats down without mercy. The air shimmers with heat. Dust rises from cracked ground, carrying the scent of thirst. In this ancient land, water is not just life, it is law. Every creature knows where the last pools remain. Elephants march in heavy lines, their shadows long against the setting sun. Antelope stumble forward, ribs showing through skin. Birds circle overhead, waiting for weakness. And then, on the edge of the crowd, humans arrive. The first to appear are Neanderthals. They move in a tight group, their broad shoulders cutting through the haze. Each carries a spear, each step steady and deliberate. Their bodies are built for power, their faces for focus. They do not rush. They claim the waterhole as if it belongs to them. From the trees beyond, slimmer figures watch. Sapiens. Their frames are lean, built for endurance, for distance. Their eyes track every move the Neanderthals make. They wait, cautious, measuring risk. To step forward too soon is to invite death. To wait too long is to die of thirst. And in the shadows still farther back, others linger. Denisovans, carrying the strength of mountain blood. Heidelbergensis, tall and mighty. Hunters of great game. Homo, smaller. Their movements quick and watchful. And on no continent at all. Far away on an island, tiny Flores bend low at their own secret pools. 7 kinds of human, found not by choice, but by need. The waterhole is a mirror of the world. It is never safe. Crocodiles lurk in the shallows. Lions circle the edge. Even the great beasts tread carefully, knowing that to drink is to lower the head, to risk the strike. But thirst has its own rules, and no one, not elephant, not lion, not human, can escape them. Neanderthals kneel, cupping hands of water to their mouths. Their eyes flick to the treeline, to the waiting sapiens. There is no battle yet, only silence, only the knowledge that 2 species of human are locked in the same need. For this moment, peace is forced, not chosen. A child among the sapiens whimpers. The sound carries across the dry grass. One Neanderthal turns his head, his gaze meeting the eyes of a sapiens hunter. The look is not war, but warning. A shared recognition. We are alike, but we are not the same. The waterhole gathers not just bodies, but history. Tracks crisscross in the mud. Hoofprints over footprints. Claw marks over both. Here, survival leaves its mark. One tribe leaves. Another arrives. One species fades. Another endures. The waterhole is the stage where destiny waits. Silent, patient, merciless. It is easy to imagine blood here. Spears thrown, screams echoing, dust rising as humans tear at each other over a mouthful of water. But often, the battles are quieter. A glare, a posture, a step too close. Sometimes, survival means holding back. Sometimes, it means waiting until your rival leaves, then drinking the mud they stirred. For sapiens, patience is the weapon. For Neanderthals, power. For others, secrecy. Each species carries its own answer to the same problem. And at the center, the water reflects their faces back at them, distorted, rippling, fading into each other. At the waterhole, humanity is revealed not in glory, but in desperation. Here, no one is king, not even humans. Crocodiles strike, lions pounce. Thirst kills as swiftly as any predator. And every drink taken is stolen from time itself, a few hours more of life, purchased with the risk of death. This is where their paths crossed, not in battlefields or empires, but in the mud around shrinking pools. Here, evolution pressed its thumb against the scale. Here, humans learned what it meant to be both predator and prey, both rival and reflection. 7 kinds of human, one waterhole, and the question already forming: how long could the world hold them all? The world changes. The sun dips lower, and the air grows sharp with cold. North of the grasslands, a kingdom of ice unfolds. White glaciers crawl across valleys. Frozen winds carve mountains into jagged knives. It is a land where winter is not a season, but a sentence. And in this frozen wilderness, giants walk. The first is Arctidus, the short-faced bear, 11 feet tall when it rises, 3 times the height of a man. Its legs are long. Its stride faster than a galloping horse. Imagine a predator that can run you down in the open and crush you with a single swipe. To meet Arctidus on the plain is not a fight. It is an ending. Then there is Smilodon, the saber-toothed cat, muscles coiled like rope, fangs long as daggers, eyes glowing in the dusk. It does not chase. It waits. It hides in tall grass, in shadows, in silence. And when it strikes with precision, a leap, a bite, and the struggle is over. To these predators, humans are nothing. Not rulers, not hunters' prey. Soft-skinned, slow-footed, weak. But still, humans walk here. Neanderthals move in tight groups, shoulders hunched against the cold. They carry spears tipped with stone, their eyes scanning the horizon. Sapiens come too. Thinner, faster, wrapped in hides, their feet bleeding as they cross the ice. They huddle close, trading warmth like treasure. To survive here is to learn the language of the ice. The cracking sound beneath your step. The shifting wind that warns of a storm. The silence that tells you predators are near. Fail to listen, and you vanish swallowed by snow. Torn apart by fangs. Forgotten beneath frost. This is not a world of plenty. The herds are massive mammoths. Bison. Woolly rhinoceros, but each is guarded by the cold. By distance. By predators waiting for the weak. A single hunt is a gamble. Miss, and you starve. Succeed, and you feed the tribe for weeks. And all the while, the giants remind humans of their place. Picture a small band of sapiens on a frozen plain. Their breath steams in the cold. They carry fire, the only warmth in miles of white. Suddenly, movement on the ridge. A shape rises taller, broader, darker than anything they've seen. Arctidus. It sniffs the wind, its head swinging side to side. The humans freeze. They do not scream. They do not run. They stand, tiny and fragile, before a beast that could erase them in seconds. Somewhere else, under moonlight, a Smilodon crouches low in the grass. Neanderthals march across the snow, their spears raised. They do not see the shadow that follows. They do not hear the breath behind them. When the strike comes, it is sudden, violent, final. Blood stains the snow. The survivors huddle closer, their fire burning brighter, not in victory, but in fear. Here, in the land of ice, survival is not dominance. It is endurance. Humans are not the strongest. They are not the fastest. But they are the ones who learn. They watch the patterns of the herds. They read the sky before the storm. They whisper warnings to children. Don't step on thin ice. Don't turn your back on the dark. Don't forget what killed us yesterday. And little by little, day by day, these lessons carve themselves into memory, into story, into survival. The giants still rule, but humans begin to find cracks in their empire. A spear thrown from a distance, a fire set against the wind, a trap laid in silence. Small victories, fragile and rare, but victories all the same. For thousands of years, humans lived in the shadow of monsters. And somehow, though weaker, though slower, they endured. The Ice Age belonged to giants. But slowly, patiently, it became the testing ground for us. Because in a world of predators and prey, humans discovered they could be both and still survive. A hand closes around stone. A strike. A spark. A sharp edge. It looks simple, almost ordinary. But this is more than survival. This is thought. Trapped in rock. For millions of years, animals have used nature. Birds bend twigs into nests. Beavers build dams. Chimpanzees strip sticks to fish termites from the ground. But only humans and those who came before us turned stone into an idea. The first great pioneer was Homo erectus. 2 million years ago, they shaped the world's first hand axes. Heavy, durable, sharp enough to cut flesh and break bone. They carried these tools across continents. From Africa into Asia, into Europe, for generations upon generations. The design hardly changed. A hand axe was more than a weapon. It was a symbol. Wherever you found one, you found human ambition. But time marched forward, and new minds picked up stone. Homo heidelbergensis crafted spears balanced for throwing, extending the reach of the hunt. Neanderthals learned to shape flakes into scrapers, to strip hides, to carve wood, to build shelters against the cold. And sapiens, newcomers with strange skulls and restless eyes, refined stone into blades so thin, so sharp, they could slice like glass. Each blow of stone against stone was a gamble. Strike too hard, and the rock shattered. Strike too soft, and the edge was dull. But when the flake broke clean, the edge gleamed, and the tribe held power in its hands. A tool was not just a tool. It was the memory of how to make it. It was knowledge carried forward. Imagine a child watching an elder chip away at flint. The rhythm steady, the sparks glowing. The child studies the angle, the twist of the wrist, the patience between strikes. Days later, the child tries and fails. Weeks later, tries again and fails. But one day, the rock splits just right. A sharp edge shines in the sun, and with it, a tradition is reborn. Tools carried memory long before writing. They were books of stone, passed from hand to hand, tribe to tribe, species to species. A Neanderthal scraper taught a sapiens visitor how to skin a hide. A sapiens blade revealed to others how to cut more meat with less effort. Knowledge spread not by accident, but by touch, by imitation, by firelight lessons in the dark. And with each new tool, humans became something else. They became planners. A hand axe was not food. It was not shelter. It was preparation. To make one was to think of the hunt tomorrow, the carcass yet to be found, the danger yet to appear. It was to think beyond hunger, beyond fear, beyond now. Other animals lived in the moment. Humans began to live in the future. And the future had edges. Picture a hunt. A herd of bison stampedes across the plain. Neanderthals wait with heavy spears. At the right moment, they throw, wood and stone flying through the air. The bison falls, its body shaking the ground. For the tribe, it is food, clothing, bone for tools, sinew for thread, all from a single strike of stone sharpened days before. Elsewhere, sapiens gather at the coast. They chip small blades, set them into wooden shafts, and craft arrows tipped with fire-hardened stone. With these, they do not need to run as fast as the deer. They need only to aim true. Distance becomes power. Weakness becomes strength. Even homonality, hidden in African caves, left signs of tool use. Small, precise, crafted with care. Their bodies may have been smaller, their world narrower, but their hands told the same story. Stone was not just survival. It was thought made visible. Stone by stone, tool by tool, humans shifted the balance of nature. No longer only prey, no longer powerless before fang and claw. They carved a space for themselves in a world of giants. Slowly, patiently, they began to turn the tables. But tools were not only for killing. They were for creating, for carving wood into shelter, bone into needles, shells into ornaments, for shaping the world to fit human needs, rather than shaping humans to fit the world. This was the first revolution. Not fire, not language, but the simple strike of stone against stone. Tools that thought. And through them, humans learned the most dangerous lesson of all, that nature could be altered. That survival was not only about endurance, but about invention. That the world was not fixed, but flexible. It was a lesson that would carry us far. Far enough to outlast the giants. Far enough to cross oceans. Far enough to stand alone. But the stone edge cut both ways. For every invention sharpened survival. It also sharpened rivalry. Tools gave sapiens the edge against Neanderthals. Spears gave Neanderthals the edge against sapiens. And in time, these edges would not only cut beasts, they would cut each other. The strike of stone was the strike that changed history. From then on, the question was no longer who was strongest. It was who could make their tools and their ideas sharper. Night, the oldest enemy of all. Long before humans feared famine, before they feared war, before they feared death itself, they feared the dark. For in the dark, predators thrived. Eyes gleamed from the brush. Shapes shifted at the edge of vision. A crack in the undergrowth could mean a lion. A whisper of wind could mean a snake. For millions of years, night belonged to them, not us. And then came fire. The spark may have been born in lightning, in volcanoes, in the accidental strike of stone on stone. But once humans learned to keep it, to carry it, to feed it, the world changed forever. Fire pushed back the night. Its glow carved out a circle of safety, a fragile island of light in an ocean of darkness. Predators paused at its edge, their eyes reflecting the flames. For the first time, humans were not helpless when the sun went down. They had a shield, a weapon, a companion. But fire was more than survival. It cooked food. Meat that once rotted the stomach softened in the heat. Parasites died in the smoke. The calories released fed brains that hungered for growth. And with stronger brains came stronger minds. Minds that dreamed, that wondered, that asked questions no animal had ever asked before. Around the fire, humans found time. Time to rest without fear. Time to teach children the lessons of the hunt. Time to remember, to imagine, to tell stories. Picture it. A small band of sapiens huddles close. Sparks rising like stars into the night. An elder speaks, his hands moving. Shadows dancing across the cave wall. He tells of the river where crocodiles wait. He tells of the hunt where a spear missed and a friend died. He tells of spirits in the sky, of monsters in the dark, of ancestors who walk beside them still. The children listen, wide-eyed. The hunters nod, remembering, and the fire burns on, carrying memory from one generation to the next. Stories were more than entertainment. They were survival. A story could save a life. Don't drink from that river. Don't walk into that valley. Don't hunt when the wind comes from the east. What had once been one man's mistake became the whole tribe's wisdom. Without fire, the dark scattered humans, silenced them, kept them small. With fire, the dark became a stage. It was here that language grew. Here that culture began. Here that imagination, once trapped inside silent minds, leapt free into the air. For Neanderthals, fire warmed cold bones in frozen Europe. For Denisovans, it lit mountain caves where snowstorms raged outside. For Sapiens, it became the heartbeat of every camp, every journey, every dream. And with fire, humans found their first weapon against fear itself. Fear of the lion's roar, softened by flame. Fear of the jackal's eyes, dimmed by smoke. Fear of the endless night, turned into song, into story, into memory. But fire also carried danger. It burned forests, destroyed shelters, consumed the careless. To master it was to walk a thin line between salvation and destruction. Too little, and predators crept in. Too much, and the tribes scattered into the dark, choking on smoke, blinded by ash. Yet humans returned to it, again and again, because they knew, without fire, they were prey. With fire, they had a chance. In its light, faces glowed orange and gold. In its warmth, strangers became family. Around it, hands reached out, held close, shared food, shared fear, shared hope. Fire was not just heat. It was connection. It was memory. It was imagination. It was the first weapon, the first shield, the first mirror in which humans saw themselves as more than animals. And as the flames rose, so too did the dreams of tomorrow. For in that glow, humans were no longer creatures of the dark. They were storytellers. They were thinkers. They were builders of a future not yet seen. And from that moment on, the night no longer ruled. For hundreds of thousands of years, Europe was their kingdom, not ours, not sapiens, but Neanderthals. They were built for it, for the cold, for the hunt, for the endless struggle of Ice Age winters. Shorter than sapiens, but broader, their bones thick as oak, their muscles wound like ropes. A single Neanderthal could outlift, outrun, and outlast almost any sapien. In strength, they were unmatched. Their hands were tools of power and precision. They chipped stone into scrapers, knives, and spearheads. They split animal hides, built shelters from mammoth bones, stitched furs into clothing with needles of bone. They tamed fire in caves that still smell of smoke after 40,000 years. To many, they have been painted as brutes, slow, dumb, without grace. But the bones and caves tell another story. Neanderthals made tools as fine as any sapien. They hunted with teamwork, driving mammoths into pits, cornering bison against cliffs. They cared for their injured, even those too broken to hunt, keeping them alive with food and fire. They buried their dead, laying bodies with flowers, pigments, even antlers. These were not beasts. These were humans. Step into a Neanderthal cave. Torchlight flickers across walls marked with red ochre, lines and dots arranged in careful patterns. These are not accidents. They are art, the oldest art in Europe. Proof that Neanderthals imagined, created, dreamed. Proof that in their hearts, they carried more than hunger. And for a long time, they thrived, while Sapiens still struggled in Africa. While Denisovans walked the high mountains of Asia, Neanderthals ruled the north. Their empire was not of cities, or armies, or kings. It was of endurance. For nearly 400,000 years, they survived every storm the Ice Age hurled against them. Picture them in winter. A blizzard rages across the steppe. Snow drives sideways. Blinding. Freezing. Animals huddle. Trees crack beneath ice. And through the storm, a band of Neanderthals marches. Their bodies wrapped in fur. Their breath steaming. Their spears sharp. They know this land. They know its dangers, its secrets, its gifts. This is not suffering for them. This is home. But history is not fair. When Sapiens came north, carrying lighter bodies, faster legs, sharper tools, and stories whispered around fires, the rules began to change. Sapiens did not outmuscle Neanderthals. They outlasted them. They gathered in larger groups, traded over longer distances, wove alliances of words and ideas. Slowly, tribe by tribe, fire by fire, the Neanderthal stronghold began to crumble. And yet they did not vanish quietly. They left traces in our blood. Many sapiens today carry fragments of Neanderthal DNA. In our skin, our immune systems, even in the shape of our skulls. Pieces of them remain. We are not only their heirs, we are their children. Still, the end came. Their caves grew cold. Their fires burned out. The voices that once echoed against stone fell silent. And the empire of the Neanderthals, so long, so strong, collapsed into memory. They were not a failure. They were not a mistake. They were simply human. Human in their triumphs. Human in their endurance. Human in their final tragedy. And when the last Neanderthal laid down by the last fire, they did not know they were the last of their kind. To them, it was another night, another storm, another struggle for survival. But for history, it was the closing of a chapter. The empire of the Neanderthals was over, and only sapiens remained to tell the story. High in the mountains of Central Asia, where the air thins and the wind cuts sharp as knives, a different kind of human once walked. We call them Denisovans, but their true name, if they had one, is lost to time. They left us no cave paintings, no great weapons, no skeletons complete enough to show their faces. For decades, their very existence was unknown. Then, in 2010, a fragment of a finger bone and a single tooth were unearthed in a Siberian cave. Scientists studied the DNA, and a shock rippled across the world. This was not Neanderthal, not sapiens, but a third lineage, a hidden people, waiting in the shadows of our history. From so little, how can we know them? And yet, in a strange way, we know them intimately, because they live on inside us. Take a breath. If you are Tibetan, or of Himalayan descent, or from the highlands of Papua or Melanesia, your lungs carry the gift of Denisovan blood, a genetic key, passed down across millennia, that allows your body to pull oxygen from thin air where others would suffocate. Their adaptation became your survival. But this is only part of their ghostly legacy. Denisovan DNA touches our immune systems, our bones, even our teeth. They are not only shadows in caves, they are shadows in us. Imagine them, thousands of years ago, climbing icy ridges no other human could endure. Their chests broad, their breath steady, their eyes scanning valleys no sapien had yet entered. In the silence of snow and rock, They thrived, where the world seemed unlivable. They made a home, and yet, like all the others, they vanished. How? Disease? Climate? Competition? Or were they simply absorbed, dissolved into Sapiens and Neanderthal tribes, their faces disappearing even as their genes lived on? We may never know the moment of their end. Their story was not written on cave walls or carved into stone. It was written in flesh, in blood, in the invisible script of DNA. In the Denisova cave today, you can still feel it, the sense of absence. The walls are bare, the fire pit's long cold, and yet, if you breathe deeply, you almost expect to hear a voice whisper from the dark. A voice that says, "We are gone," but not entirely. The Denisovans are ghosts not because they are forgotten, but because they are half-remembered. Too little evidence to see them clearly. Too much evidence to ever let them go. They remain in the liminal space between myth and science, unseen, unknown, and yet alive in every breath taken at the roof of the world. We call them lost, but in truth, they are still here. In every heart that beats at altitude, in every body that fights off disease with unseen defenses, in every child born with fragments of Denisovan legacy coded in their cells. They vanished, and yet they endure. The ghosts of the mountains still walk with us. Far to the south, in the islands of Indonesia, the world took a stranger turn. Here, amid rainforests thick with vines and rivers fed by volcanoes, lived the smallest humans ever known, barely 3.5 feet tall, weighing no more than a child, yet fully grown. We call them hobbits. Homo floresiensis, discovered in 2003 in the limestone caves of Flores. Their bones stunned the world. At first, scientists thought they belonged to a diseased sapien, a body stunted by deformity. But the more they studied, the clearer it became. This was no accident. This was a different species of human, tiny in frame, but human all the same. Their tools were miniature stone flakes sharpened for hunting small prey. Their fire pits were small circles, just enough for a handful of figures to huddle close. And their prey? The pygmy elephant stegodon itself, no taller than a pony, sharing the island with giant storks and dragon-like lizards. On Flores, everything was different. The island was a world within a world, and the hobbits fit it perfectly. How did they become so small? Evolution has a rule. On islands, giants shrink and small creatures grow. Food is limited. Predators are rare. The body adapts to fit the space available. Mammoths became dwarfs on Mediterranean islands. Hippos shrank in Madagascar. And humans on Flores became hobbits. Picture them moving through dense jungle. Their steps light. Their bodies agile, slipping between roots and vines. They climb cliffs, cross rivers, track pygmy elephants through the underbrush. Spears no taller than a child's arm in their hands. Faces lit by the flicker of fire. To us, they might look fragile. To their world, they were perfectly built. And for thousands of years, they endured. Separate from Neanderthals. Separate from Sapiens. Living their own story. Their own rhythms. Their own empire of the small. But isolation is a double-edged sword. The same seas that protected them also trapped them. When climate shifted, when volcanoes rumbled, when strangers finally crossed the water, the hobbits had nowhere to run. Their fires went out. Their voices went silent. What killed them? We cannot say for certain. Was it rising seas that cut them off from food? Was it eruption? Fire raining from their own mountains? Or was it sapiens, arriving by boat, carrying sharper tools and hungrier tribes? Perhaps it was all of these, working together, as nature so often does. And so, the hobbits of Flores vanished. Today, if you step into Liangbua cave, where their bones were found, the air is cool, damp with echoes. A shaft of light falls from the ceiling, striking the spot where they once lived. Stand there, and you cannot help but feel the presence of another humanity, one that was small, but no less real. What would it have been like to meet them? To look into their eyes, half our height, but filled with the same fire, the same fear, the same need to endure? Would we have seen them as kin, or dismissed them as curiosities? Homo floresiensis reminds us that humanity was never one path. Evolution tried many forms. Some tall, some strong, some small, some swift, all equally human, all equally fragile. Their story ended long before ours began in full. But in their survival, in their shrinking bodies that bent to the will of an island, they proved a truth as old as time: size does not decide destiny. Adaptation does. They were tiny, but they were human. And when their fire finally dimmed in the forests of Flores, the world became a little quieter. The hobbits are gone, but they leave us a question that lingers. How many other kinds of human once lived in corners we have not yet found? How many fires burned and went out before we ever knew their light existed? Long before we ruled the earth, we were fragile. Long before we built cities, before we painted walls, before we sailed oceans, we were prey. Homo sapiens, in our earliest days, were not impressive. Our bodies were lean, but not strong. We had no claws, no fangs, no armor of fur or hide. Against a lion, we stood no chance. Against a bear, we were crushed. Even Neanderthals, our cousins, dwarfed us in muscle. Side by side, we looked like children standing next to soldiers. So how did we survive? Not by strength, not by speed, not by savagery. We survived by each other. Picture a small band of sapiens on the African savanna. The sun burns overhead. The grass sways tall and dry. A child stumbles, too weak from hunger. In other species, weakness means abandonment. The herd moves on. The pack leaves stragglers behind. But sapiens stop. They lift the child. They share water. They slow their pace. One life is not thrown away, it is carried. At the edge of camp, an elder coughs, lungs failing, teeth worn down. In most worlds, the sick are a burden. But here, sapiens feed him, wrap him in hides, listen to his stories. He cannot hunt, but he can teach. He remembers where the river floods, where the lions stalk, where the fruit ripens first. His memory is worth more than his muscle. And so, he lives. When a hunter breaks a leg, he does not die. Others carry him home. When a mother dies in childbirth, her infant does not perish. Other women nurse the child as their own. Survival is shared. Loss is softened. Weakness is transformed into strength. This was our gift. Not claws, not muscle, not speed, but community. And with community came memory. Around fires, we spoke. We told what we saw, what we feared, what we learned. One person's scar became everyone's lesson. Do not drink from that river, it hides crocodiles. Do not follow that trail, it leads to lions. Do not eat that berry, it kills. Stories turn mistakes into wisdom, deaths into survival. This was how sapiens began to shift the balance. We did not need to be stronger, because we were many. We did not need to be faster, because we remembered. We did not need to be braver, because fear was shared and softened by the group. Our weakness forced us to lean on one another, and in doing so, it created something new in the world: empathy. When a child cried, we answered. When a friend bled, we bandaged. When a voice trembled, we listened. Empathy was not softness. It was strategy. It kept us alive where stronger species fell. Still, weakness was never far away. Many sapiens died young. Many were hunted, trampled, starved. We lived on the edge, clinging to survival by our fingernails. And yet, every time we stumbled, someone reached out a hand. Every time we faltered, someone carried the weight. And slowly, that weakness became our greatest weapon. For Neanderthals, survival was power. For Denisovans, survival was altitude. For Flores hobbits, survival was size. For sapiens, survival was each other. And with that, we began to change the game. We were still small. We were still fragile. But our tribes grew larger. Our voices carried farther. Our memories stretched across generations. And in the long contest of humanity, it was not always the strongest who endured, but the most united. One day, this gift would carry us across deserts, through storms, over oceans, into every corner of the earth. But at the beginning, it was simple. A hand outstretched to help another. A voice telling a story. A fire shared in the dark. We were weak, but together, we were strong. And that made all the difference. There was a time when the world looked different, when oceans were lower, and the cold locked water into endless walls of ice. And in that age, a land bridge rose from the sea. Beringia, a vast plain of grass and tundra, stretching nearly 1,000 miles between Asia and the Americas. Today it lies buried beneath the Bering Strait, dark and frozen. But 40,000 years ago, it was alive with mammoths, bison, woolly rhinos, wolves, and humans. For Sapiens, this bridge was not a map. It was not discovery. It was necessity. They did not know they were stepping into a new continent. They were chasing food. Herds of mammoth and bison moved east, and the humans followed, one cautious step at a time. Picture the scene. The wind howls across open plains. Snow sweeps sideways. Blinding. Stinging. A small band of sapiens trudges forward, fur pulled tight around thin bodies. Their feet ache. Their lungs burn. Behind them, children cry. Ahead, mammoths move slowly, massive shadows against the white. If the humans can bring one down, their tribe will eat for weeks. If not, hunger waits like a predator. At night, they huddle around fire, the only warmth for miles. Flames flicker, sparks rise, and stories are whispered to keep the children calm. Tomorrow, the herd will turn. Tomorrow, the hunt will succeed. Tomorrow is hope, and hope keeps them moving. Step by step, they cross into a world no human has ever seen. To them, it is not a crossing. It is just the hunt. But in truth, it is one of the greatest journeys in human history. On the far side of Beringia lies the American continent untouched. Waiting. Forests filled with giant sloths taller than men. Armadillos the size of cars. Saber-toothed cats lurking in the shadows. Herds of mammoth roam plains that stretch forever. Rivers swarm with fish. The land is wild, unbroken, rich. For the first time, humans stand in a world with no rivals. No Neanderthals. No Denisovans. No hobbits. No other humans at all. Here, sapiens are alone. But aloneness does not mean safety. The beasts of America are titans. A single step wrong, and a human can be crushed under a mammoth's foot, torn by a lion's claws, drowned in icy rivers. Survival is not guaranteed. It never was. Yet sapiens adapt. They learn the new land quickly. They track new prey, shape new tools, carve shelters from bones. And with each generation, they push deeper south into plains, east into forests, across mountains, rivers, deserts. In time, their footprints will stretch from the Alaskan tundra to the southern tip of Chile. The crossing of Beringia is more than migration. It is transformation. For here, sapiens begin to realize what they are: the wanderers, the explorers, the settlers of every land. No other species of human ever ranged so far, so fast. No other dared. Beringia was not a bridge of stone. It was a bridge of time, open for only a fleeting age, then drowned forever beneath the sea. But while it lasted, it carried humanity into a new world, and with it, new triumphs, new tragedies, new extinctions. For when sapiens entered the Americas, they were not the only giants here. Others waited. Mammoths, mastodons, saber-toothed cats, ground sloths, beasts that had never seen a human before, beasts that would, in time, face our fire and fall. But for now, as the first families stepped onto the soil of a new continent, all they knew was hunger, cold, and the endless hope of tomorrow. They were still fragile, still weak, but they had crossed into a world of endless possibility, and history itself had crossed with them. They had crossed into a new world, but this world already had its rulers. The Americas were a kingdom of giants. Mammoths moved in herds, shaking the ground as they walked. Mastodons, their forest-dwelling cousins, tore through trees with tusks like spears. Saber-toothed cats prowled the shadows, fangs glinting in the firelight. Ground sloths, taller than a house, rose on their hind legs to strip trees bare. Armadillos the size of cars rolled across plains, their shells thick as armor. For millions of years, these beasts had dominated the continent. They had faced ice, storms, predators, and survived. They had never faced humans. Until now, the first encounters were not battles, but accidents. A band of sapiens watches a mammoth herd from the cover of brush. One mammoth stumbles, old and weak. The humans creep closer, spears in hand. The mammoth turns, trumpets, and charges. The ground shakes. Panic erupts. Spears are thrown. Shouts ring out. And when the dust settles, one mammoth lies still. It is food. It is shelter. It is survival. A single mammoth feeds dozens. Its bones built into huts. Its hide stitched into clothing. Its sinews into thread. For humans, this is a miracle. For mammoths, it is the beginning of the end. Clashes follow. In open plains, humans set fires to drive beasts into traps. At rivers, they wait with spears as herds cross, striking at the weakest. In forests, they learn the paths of giant sloths, ambushing them as they lumber between trees. But victory is never guaranteed. Many hunts end in death for the hunters. A mammoth's tusk can impale a man clean through. A sloth's claws can tear open a chest with one strike. A saber-tooth's leap is faster than any human can see. For every beast that falls, humans pay in blood. Still, the balance shifts. Because humans are not stronger. They are not faster. But they learn. They plan. They adapt. They share knowledge. They whisper warnings by firelight. Do not face the mammoth from the front. Do not chase the sloth uphill. Do not hunt alone. Mistakes become memory. Memory becomes survival. And slowly, the giants begin to fall. But it is not humans alone. The world itself is changing. Ice retreats. Forests spread. Grasslands shrink. Herds find less to eat. Calves starve. Populations drop. Climate weakens them. And humans deliver the final blow. Imagine standing on the plains of North America, watching a herd of mammoths thunder past. They have ruled this land for ages untold. Yet in the shadows, tiny figures move with fire and stone. One species carries no tusks, no claws, no armor, only patience, strategy, and unity. And with that, they tip the scales against the giants. Across the world, the story repeats. In Australia, giant kangaroos and wombats vanish after humans arrive. In the Americas, mammoths and saber-tooths disappear within a few thousand years. Even in Europe and Asia, woolly rhinos and cave lions fade as humans spread. It is not always slaughter. Often, it is pressure. The taking of calves, the burning of grasslands, the pushing of giants into smaller and smaller corners until they vanish. Humans do not need to kill them all. They need only to tilt the balance already strained by climate. And nature does the rest. And yet, this clash leaves scars. In bones buried deep. In stories whispered by descendants. In legends of monsters long gone. The giants walked with us for millennia. They shaped us as much as we shaped them. Our spears grew sharper because of them. Our strategies grew smarter. Our unity grew stronger. When the last giant fell, humanity stood taller, but the world felt emptier. The clash with giants was not just the end of beasts. It was the birth of something new. A world where humans, and humans alone, ruled the top of the chain. Not every encounter between humans ended in blood. Sometimes, it ended in love. Or at least, in closeness. For tens of thousands of years, Sapiens lived beside Neanderthals, Denisovans, and perhaps others we have not yet found. They shared rivers, caves, hunting grounds. They watched the same sunsets, listened to the same storms, feared the same predators. And sometimes, in that long span of years, they saw one another not as rivals, but as companions. Archaeology tells us little of their feelings. The bones do not whisper about love, or desire, or tenderness. But the DNA in our veins tells another story. Because inside us, in our blood, in our lungs, in our skin are traces of them. We carry Neanderthal and Denisovan genes even today, which means Sapiens and others did more than fight. They lay down together. They bore children together. They became family. Imagine it. A Sapiens hunter, lean and quick, meets the eyes of a Neanderthal woman, broad-shouldered, strong, built for the cold. In another camp, a Denisovan man with a chest like a mountain watches over Sapiens' children by firelight. Across generations, these unions were not rare accidents. They were real lives, real bonds, repeated often enough that their legacy still flows in us. And the gifts of those unions endure. From Neanderthals, we inherited immune defenses that help us fight off disease. In some, genes that shape hair, skin, and even moods. From Denisovans came the adaptations that let certain people breathe high mountain air, where oxygen thins and others would falter. Each encounter left behind something more than memory. It left survival itself. Of course, these relationships were not always tender. Some may have been forced, born of violence, domination, or desperation. The past is not kind, and we cannot romanticize it. But even so, the children lived. The children carried blood from two lineages, and those children carried it forward. Today, nearly every person outside Africa carries Neanderthal DNA. In Tibet, in the Andes, in the Himalayas, millions carry Denisovan genes. The ghosts of other humans walk with us, not as phantoms in caves, but as strands of code in our bodies. Think of that for a moment. We are not alone. We never were. The sapiens alive today are not pure, not separate, not untouched. We are mosaics, patchworks stitched together from the lives of many humans, from unions across species that no longer walk the earth. And so, in a strange and quiet way, they did not vanish completely. Neanderthals are gone, but they live in our skin, our bones, our thoughts. Denisovans are gone, but they breathe in every lung that climbs high peaks. Even the hobbits, though we carry no trace of their DNA, survive in our imagination. Proof that humanity was never one path, but many. Love and genes tell a softer truth about survival. That sometimes, the future is not forged in war, but in union. That sometimes, the line between us and them blurs. And from that blur, something new is born. When we look in the mirror, we do not see only sapiens. We see fragments of every human who came before us. We see strength borrowed from rivals, resilience borrowed from strangers, gifts borrowed from ghosts. And when we look at each other across nations, across continents, across the vast differences that divide us, we should remember, we have always been mixed, always been joined, always been, in some way, family. The story of humanity is not only conquest and extinction. It is also love. And love, too, has shaped who we are. For hundreds of thousands of years, the world was filled with many kinds of human, but one by one, their fires dimmed. In Africa, the last of Homo naledi carried torches deep into caves, their small bodies vanishing into the dark. What secrets they took with them, no one can say. They left behind bones stacked in hidden chambers, silent, still, unanswered, and then they were gone. In Europe, mighty Homo heidelbergensis hunted, stood tall, and ruled the plains. For ages, they thrived, but climate shifted, rivals grew stronger, and their numbers fell. Their voices faded. Their spears were abandoned in the soil. They, too, vanished. On Flores, the hobbits lived quietly in their island forests. Tiny, ingenious, perfectly adapted to their strange home. But the seas rose, volcanoes erupted, and perhaps newcomers arrived with sharper tools. Their songs ended. Their world fell silent. The hobbits were no more. In the frozen north, Denisovans climbed mountains, breathed air no one else could endure, and carried fire through storms of snow. But they left only fragments behind. A tooth, a bone, a whisper in our DNA. Their bodies are gone, but their gifts endure. Their faces, their voices, their stories lost. And finally, the Neanderthals, the last of the giants. For 400,000 years, they survived ice, hunger, predators. They painted caves. They buried their dead. They cared for their young. They stood against the storms of the Ice Age. But then, in a blink of history's eye, They fell. We do not know their final night. Was it in a cave, huddled around the last fire? Was it on a plain, watching the last hunt fail? Was it quiet, a family holding together against the cold? Or was it violent, tribes clashing until only silence remained? However it ended, the result was the same. Their fire went out, and with them, the age of many humans ended. On the map of time, lights had burned across continents, some bright, some faint, all flickering together. Then, slowly, they began to fade. Naledi, Heidelbergensis, Floriensis, Denisovans, Neanderthals, one by one, extinguished, until at last, only a single flame remained. Sapiens. We had not won through strength. We had not won through brilliance beyond all others. We had won by patience, by numbers, by chance, by luck, by 1,000 small decisions that turned the tide. But victory was not triumph. It was loneliness, because for the first time in millions of years, Earth held only one kind of human. And what did it feel like? Did our ancestors know they were alone? Did they sense the silence where other voices had been? Did they tell stories of the Neanderthals, the Denisovans, the Hobbits as neighbors, as rivals, as kin? Or did they forget them, bury their memory in myth until science uncovered their bones again? The day only one remained was not a day at all. It was a long twilight, stretching across centuries, as each species flickered out. And yet, looking back, it feels like a single breath, a curtain falling on an ancient play. When it ended, only Sapiens stood beneath the stars. Only Sapiens carried fire forward. Only Sapiens told stories by night. We were the last humans left, and the world would never be the same again. We stand alone now, but we were never meant to. For millions of years, Earth was a crowded stage of humanity. Different bodies, different minds, different ways of being human. They walked beside us, laughed, hunted, dreamed, feared, and vanished. And yet, in a way, they never left, because we carry them still. When we breathe high mountain air, Denisovans breathe with us. When our immune systems fight disease, Neanderthals guard us. When we look at the fragile bones of a child, we remember the hobbits of Flores. When we bury our dead, we echo the rituals of Heidelbergensis. When we light a fire in the dark, we touch the same flame that Naledi once carried into caves. The story of Sapiens is not a story of victory. It is a story of inheritance. A story of survival bought with sacrifice theirs and ours. We were not the strongest. We were not the fiercest. We were not even the smartest in every way. But we were the most patient. We endured. We stumbled forward, carrying scars as lessons, carrying failures as memories, carrying fire as hope. And step by step, century by century, we became the last. But what does it mean to be the last? When Neanderthals fell, who mourned them? When Denisovans vanished, who remembered? When the hobbits sang their final song, who listened? Only us. Only Sapiens remain to tell their stories. And perhaps that is our burden, to remember not just ourselves, but all the humans who came before, to keep their fires alive, not in caves or camps, but in our words, our science, our imagination. The bones remind us of the cost. The empty caves remind us of the silence. The DNA inside us whispers that we are not pure, not separate, not alone. We are mosaics, patchwork beings stitched from love, from rivalry, from survival across species. We are not simply sapiens. We are humanity, all of it, condensed into one fragile species. And so, the question lingers. What if the others had survived? Imagine a world where Neanderthals built cities beside ours, their strength shaping architecture of stone. Imagine Denisovans ruling the high mountains, trading secrets of air and altitude. Imagine hobbits tending their forests, teaching us how to live smaller, simpler, wiser. Imagine 7 humans, together, sharing the earth. Would we have cooperated? Would we have destroyed each other? Would the world be richer or broken? We cannot know. We can only ask. And in asking, we see ourselves more clearly. Because their extinction is a warning. It tells us that no species is guaranteed. Not even us. Climate can change. Disease can strike. Rivalry can tear us apart. We survived not because we were destined to, but because we were lucky. And luck can run out. What we still remember, what we must never forget, is that survival is fragile. Fire must be fed. Stories must be told. Empathy must be chosen. Again and again. Or we will follow the others into silence. 300,000 years ago, the world held 7 kinds of human. Today it holds 1. The flame is in our hands. It always was. The story is not finished. It is still being written by us. So the question returns, echoing through time. If the others had survived, what kind of world would this be? And a second question rises. Sharper, closer, urgent. Now that we are alone, what kind of world will we choose to make? And so, the age of many humans ended, and only we remain. But the story is far from over. We carry their fire. We carry their memory. And we decide what comes next. If this journey through our deep past moved you, don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you'll never miss the next story. Now we'd like to hear from you. Backhand index pointing right. If the other human species had survived, what kind of world do you think we would live in today? Share your thoughts in the comments because the story of humanity is still being written. Together.